The shrill ring of my phone pierced the silence of my office, making me jump. I glanced at the caller ID and felt my stomach knot. Patricia! My mother-in-law's name on the screen was enough to send a wave of dread through me. I took a deep breath, steeling myself before answering. "Hello, Patricia," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Olivia, dear," her saccharine tone oozed through the speaker. "I hope I'm not interrupting anything important." I bit back a sarcastic response. Of course, she was interrupting. She always did. "What can I do for you?" I asked instead. "Well, I was just wondering if you'd picked up Connor's dry cleaning yet. You know how he likes his shirts pressed just so for work." I closed my eyes, counting to 5 in my head. "Patricia, I'm at work. Connor can pick up his own dry cleaning." "Oh, Olivia," she tutted. "A good wife takes care of these things. You wouldn't want Connor to look unprofessional, would you?" Before I could respond, my office door opened. Ethan, my colleague, poked his head in. He mouthed, "Meeting in 5, and I nodded gratefully. "I have to go, Patricia. I have a meeting." "Of course, dear. We'll talk later about the dry cleaning." I hung up, feeling a headache brewing behind my eyes. Ethan lingered in the doorway, concern etched on his face. "Everything okay?" he asked. I forced a smile. "Just the usual mother-in-law drama." Ethan shook his head. "I don't know how you put up with it. You're a saint, Olivia." If only he knew. If only anyone knew the half of what I dealt with daily. I gathered my notes for the meeting, trying to push thoughts of Patricia out of my mind. As we walked to the conference room, Ethan leaned in. "Hey, a bunch of us are going for drinks after work. Want to join?" The offer was tempting, a chance to unwind, to be around people who actually appreciated me, but I knew what awaited me at home if I was late. "I can't," I said, regret coloring my voice. "Connor's expecting me." Ethan's disappointment was palpable, but he nodded understandingly. The meeting dragged on, but my mind was elsewhere. I thought about Connor, about how he'd react if he knew the truth about my job, about how much I really made. It was a secret I'd kept for years, partly out of habit, partly out of fear of Patricia's reaction. As I drove home that evening, my phone buzzed with a text from Connor. "Mom's coming over for dinner. Pick up some wine?" I gripped the steering wheel tighter, my knuckles turning white. Of course, Patricia was coming over. She always found a way to insert herself into our lives. I walked into our house, arms laden with groceries and the requested wine. The sound of Patricia's laughter drifted from the kitchen, along with the aroma of something burning. "Olivia, dear," Patricia called out. "We're in here. I'm just showing Connor how to properly cook a roast. The poor boy's been living off your attempts at cooking for far too long." I set the bags down, taking a moment to compose myself before entering the kitchen. Connor stood by the stove, looking lost, while Patricia fussed over a blackened piece of meat. "Hi, honey," Connor said, giving me a quick peck on the cheek. "Mom's teaching me how to cook." I forced a smile. "That's great. I brought wine." Patricia clucked her tongue. "Oh, Olivia, you know Connor prefers beer with his dinner. Wine is so pretentious." I felt something snap inside me. The stress of the day, the constant criticisms, it all came to a head. "Actually," I said, my voice tight, "I brought the wine for me. I think I'm going to need it." The kitchen fell silent. Connor looked bewildered, while Patricia's eyes narrowed. I knew I'd pay for that comment later, but for now, I savored the small victory. As I poured myself a generous glass of wine, I couldn't help but wonder how long I could keep living like this. Something had to give. And soon. I never imagined my life could get worse, but fate has a twisted sense of humor. It was a crisp Sunday morning when Connor dropped the bombshell. "Honey," he said, his voice hesitant, "Mom's lease is up, and she's having trouble finding a new place. I told her she could stay with us for a while." The mug I was holding slipped from my grasp, shattering on the kitchen floor. Coffee splattered everywhere, but I barely noticed. "You did what?" I whispered, my voice barely audible. Connor rushed to clean up the mess, avoiding my gaze. "It's just temporary, Olivia. She's family. We can't leave her without a place to stay." I stood there, frozen, as the reality of the situation sank in. Patricia, living with us. The thought made me physically ill. "When?" I managed to ask. "She's moving in today," Connor replied, still not meeting my eyes. Before I could respond, the doorbell rang. Connor practically sprinted to answer it, leaving me alone in the kitchen, surrounded by broken ceramic and spilled coffee. Patricia's voice floated through the house, saccharine sweet. "Oh, Connor, darling! Thank you so much for this. You're such a good son." I took a deep breath, plastered on a fake smile, and went to greet my new housemate. The next few days were a blur of passive-aggressive comments and thinly veiled insults. Patricia had taken over our guest room, but her presence seemed to fill every corner of the house. One evening, as I was preparing dinner, Patricia sauntered into the kitchen. "Olivia, dear," she said, her tone dripping with false concern, "don't you think those pants are a bit tight? A woman your age should be more mindful of her figure." I gripped the knife I was using to chop vegetables tighter. "My pants are fine, Patricia," I said through gritted teeth. She tsked. "If you say so, dear. I just worry about Connor. Men can be so easily tempted when their wives let themselves go." Before I could retort, Connor walked in. "Something smells great," he said, oblivious to the tension. Patricia beamed at him. "I was just giving Olivia some fashion advice. You know how I worry about you two." Connor laughed. "Mom, you don't need to worry about us. Olivia and I are fine." I turned back to the stove, fighting back tears of frustration. We were not fine. We were far from fine. The next morning, I woke up to find Patricia rearranging our living room. She had moved all the furniture and was hanging new curtains. "Patricia," I said, trying to keep my voice level, "what are you doing?" She turned, a picture of innocence. "Oh, Olivia, I hope you don't mind. This room needed a woman's touch. It was so drab before." I closed my eyes, counting to 10. When I opened them, Patricia was still there, smiling that infuriating smile. "This is my house," I said quietly. "You can't just change things without asking." Patricia's smile faltered for a moment before returning full force. "Don't be silly, dear. This is Connor's house too, and he loves what I've done with the place." As if on cue, Connor walked in. "Wow, Mom, the room looks great." I felt something inside me snap. Without a word, I grabbed my keys and stormed out of the house. I found myself in the parking lot at work, not even remembering the drive. Ethan was just arriving, and his face lit up when he saw me. "Olivia, what are you doing here on a Saturday?" I burst into tears, the stress of the past few days finally overwhelming me. Ethan rushed over, concern etched on his face. Hey, he said softly, pulling me into a hug. "What's wrong?" Through my sobs, I managed to explain the situation. Ethan listened, his face growing darker with each word. "Olivia," he said when I finished, "you can't keep living like this. It's not healthy." I nodded, wiping my eyes. "I know, but what can I do? She's Connor's mother." Ethan looked at me, his eyes intense. "You have options, Olivia, more than you realize." As I stood there in the parking lot, I felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe Ethan was right. Maybe I did have options, and maybe it was time I started exploring them. The weeks that followed Patricia's move-in were a living nightmare. Every morning, I'd wake up hoping it had all been a bad dream, only to hear her shrill voice echoing through the house. Today was no different. "Olivia," Patricia called from downstairs, "Connor's shirts need ironing." I gritted my teeth, counting to 10 before responding. "I'm getting ready for work, Patricia. Connor can iron his own shirts." The sound of footsteps on the stairs made my heart race. Patricia appeared in the doorway, her face a mask of disapproval. "A good wife takes care of her husband," she said, her voice dripping with condescension. "But I suppose that's too much to ask of you." Before I could retort, Connor appeared behind his mother. "It's okay, Mom, I can do it myself." Patricia turned to him, all sweetness and light. "Oh, honey, you shouldn't have to. That's what wives are for." I felt something snap inside me. "That's it," I said, my voice low and dangerous. "I'm leaving for work. Don't wait up." I brushed past them both, ignoring Connor's confused calls. As I slammed the front door behind me, I felt a mixture of relief and guilt. Relief to be away from Patricia's constant criticism, guilt for leaving Connor to deal with her alone. At work, I threw myself into my projects, desperate for any distraction. Ethan noticed my frazzled state and cornered me in the break room. "Olivia," he said gently, "you can't keep going on like this. You look exhausted." I sighed, running a hand through my hair. "I know, Ethan, but what can I do? She's always there, always criticizing, always undermining me." Ethan's eyes hardened. "You need to stand up for yourself. Tell Connor how you feel." I laughed bitterly. "I've tried. He just doesn't see it. To him, she's just being helpful." As I spoke, my phone buzzed with a text from Connor. "Mom wants to know what's for dinner. She says your cooking could use some work." I showed Ethan the message, my hands shaking with anger. He read it, his face darkening. "That's it," he said firmly. "You're coming home with me tonight. You need a break from all this." Part of me wanted to protest, to be the dutiful wife and go home. But a larger part, the part that was tired of being belittled and ignored, nodded in agreement. I texted Connor back. "Working late, order takeout." Ethan's apartment was small but cozy, a stark contrast to the tension-filled house I'd left behind. As we sat on his couch, nursing glasses of wine, I felt myself relax for the first time in weeks. "Thank you," I said softly. "I didn't realize how much I needed this." Ethan smiled, his eyes warm. "Anytime, Olivia. You deserve so much better than what you're getting at home." As the night wore on, I found myself opening up to Ethan in a way I hadn't with anyone in years. I told him about my secret career success, about the constant pressure from Patricia, about Connor's indifference. "Why do you stay?" Ethan asked, his voice gentle but probing. I stared into my wine glass, searching for an answer. I don't know anymore." Just then, my phone exploded with notifications, missed calls and texts from Connor and Patricia. I scrolled through them, my heart sinking with each message. "Where are you?" "Mom's worried sick." "How could you be so selfish?" "A good wife doesn't stay out all night." The last message made me see red. Without thinking, I dialed Connor's number. "Olivia?" he answered, his voice a mixture of relief and anger. "Where the hell are you?" "I'm safe," I said, my voice steady despite the anger coursing through me. "And I'm not coming home tonight." "What? But Mom," I cut him off. "No, Connor, not this time. I can't do this anymore. Your mother, your indifference, all of it. I'm done." As I hung up, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. Ethan looked at me, a mixture of concern and admiration in his eyes. "What now?" he asked softly. I took a deep breath, feeling for the first time in years like I was in control of my own life. "Now," I said, "I start fighting back." The morning after my night at Ethan's, I returned home to face the music. As I stepped through the front door, the silence was deafening. Then, like a storm breaking, Patricia's voice rang out. "Well, look who finally decided to grace us with her presence," she sneered from the living room. Connor sat beside her, his face a mask of disappointment and confusion. I took a deep breath, steeling myself. "We need to talk," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. Patricia scoffed. "About your shameful behavior? I should say so." "No," I replied, looking directly at Connor. "About us, about this situation." Connor shifted uncomfortably. "Olivia, can't we just forget about last night? Mom was worried sick." I felt my resolve hardening. "No, Connor, we can't just forget. This isn't working. Your mother living here, her constant criticism, your indifference, it's killing me." Patricia stood up, her eyes flashing. "How dare you, after everything we've done for you?" I laughed bitterly. "Done for me? You've done nothing but tear me down since the day I married Connor." The argument escalated quickly, voices rising, accusations flying. In the heat of the moment, I revealed my secret. "You have no idea what I've sacrificed for this family," I shouted. "I'm the one who's been supporting us. My job, my success, it's all been for us." The room fell silent. Connor stared at me, shocked. Patricia's face contorted with a mixture of disbelief and anger. "What are you talking about?" Connor asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Before I could respond, a wave of dizziness hit me. The room started to spin, and I felt my knees buckle. The last thing I heard was Connor calling my name as everything went black. I woke up in a hospital bed, the steady beep of monitors filling the room. Ethan was by my side, concern etched on his face. "What happened?" I croaked, my throat dry. "You collapsed at home," Ethan explained softly. "Exhaustion and severe stress," the doctors said. "You've been out for a day." I closed my eyes, the memories flooding back. "Connor?" Ethan's expression darkened. "He was here earlier, left when I arrived." A nurse entered, checking my vitals. "Mrs. Thompson, how are you feeling?" "Like I've been hit by a truck," I admitted. She nodded sympathetically. "That's to be expected. Your body's been under extreme stress. You need rest and a major lifestyle change." As she left, Ethan took my hand. "Olivia, this can't go on. You're killing yourself." I nodded, tears welling up. "I know, but what can I do? It's my home, my marriage." "Is it worth your life?" Ethan asked gently. Before I could answer, the door opened. Connor walked in, looking haggard. His eyes narrowed when he saw Ethan. "Could you give us a minute?" he asked, his tone clipped. Ethan squeezed my hand before leaving, throwing a concerned glance over his shoulder. Connor sat in the chair Ethan had vacated. "Why didn't you tell me?" he asked, his voice a mixture of hurt and anger. "About your job, about how you were feeling." I sighed, feeling drained. "Would you have listened? Every time I tried to talk about your mother, you dismissed my concerns." Connor ran a hand through his hair. "I didn't realize." "That's the problem, Connor," I said softly. "You never realized. You never saw how much I was struggling." He reached for my hand, but I pulled away. "What do we do now?" he asked. I looked at him, really looked at him, and for the first time in years I saw clearly. I saw a man who, despite his good intentions, had consistently chosen his mother over his wife, a man who had stood by while I was belittled and broken down. "I don't know," I replied honestly, "but I know I can't go back to the way things were. I won't survive it." Connor nodded slowly, a look of resignation crossing his face. "And your colleague, Ethan?" "He's been a friend when I needed one," I said firmly. "Nothing more." As Connor left, promising to return later, I felt a strange sense of calm wash over me. For the first time in years, I was putting myself first. The road ahead was uncertain, but one thing was clear. Things had to change, and they had to change now. After a week in the hospital, I returned home with a mix of dread and determination. The house was eerily quiet as I stepped inside, my footsteps echoing in the hallway. "Welcome back," Connor said, emerging from the kitchen. His voice was strained, the tension between us palpable. I nodded, unsure of what to say. The revelation of my financial success still hung in the air, unaddressed. "Where's Patricia?" I asked, dreading the answer. Connor sighed. "In the guest room. She's not happy," I snorted. "When is she ever?" As if summoned by our conversation, Patricia appeared at the top of the stairs. Her eyes narrowed as she saw me. "So the prodigal daughter-in-law returns," she sneered. "I hope you're proud of yourself, worrying us all like that." I felt my blood begin to boil. Proud? Of being worked to the point of collapse? Of being constantly belittled and criticized in my own home? Patricia descended the stairs, her face a mask of indignation. "How dare you? After everything we've done for you." "Enough, Mom," Connor interjected, but his voice lacked conviction. I laughed bitterly. "Everything you've done for me? You mean moving in uninvited? Criticizing my every move, making me feel worthless in my own home?" Patricia's face reddened. "I've only ever tried to help. It's not my fault you're so sensitive. But then again, what can we expect from someone with your background?" The room fell silent. Connor's eyes widened in shock. "What do you mean by that?" I asked, my voice dangerously low. Patricia smirked, sensing she'd struck a nerve. "Well, dear, it's no secret that you come from, shall we say, humble beginnings. No wonder you struggle to be a proper wife. You never had a good example, did you?" I felt as if I'd been slapped. "How dare you bring my parents into this?" "Mom, that's enough," Connor said, but Patricia was on a roll. "It's the truth, isn't it? Your poor, deceased parents. What would they think of you now? Lying about your job, neglecting your wifely duties." Something inside me snapped. Years of pent-up frustration and anger came pouring out. "My parents would be proud of me," I shouted. "They taught me to work hard, to stand up for myself. They loved me unconditionally, something you clearly know nothing about." Patricia gasped, clutching her chest in mock offense. "Well, I never—" "No, you never." I cut her off. "You never cared about anyone but yourself. You've manipulated Connor his entire life, and now you're trying to do the same to me. But I won't let you. Not anymore." I turned to Connor, who stood frozen, his eyes darting between his mother and me. "Connor," I said, my voice shaking with emotion, "I can't do this anymore. I won't live like this. It's her or me." The silence that followed was deafening. Connor opened his mouth, then closed it again at a loss for words. Patricia recovered first. "Don't be ridiculous, Olivia. Connor would never choose you over his own mother." "Would you, darling?" Connor's lack of response was all the answer I needed. In that moment, I saw our entire marriage laid bare. Years of compromise, of putting everyone else's needs before my own, of slowly losing myself. "I see," I said quietly. The calm that washed over me was almost frightening. "Then I've made my decision." I walked past them both, heading for the stairs. Connor finally found his voice. "Olivia, wait, where are you going?" I paused, looking back at them. Patricia stood triumphant, while Connor looked lost and confused. "I'm packing my bags," I said. "I'm leaving." As I climbed the stairs, I heard Patricia's smug voice. Good riddance, you'll be back, begging for forgiveness. But I knew I wouldn't. For the first time in years, I felt free. The road ahead was uncertain, but anything was better than staying in this toxic environment. As I threw clothes into a suitcase, I made a silent promise to myself. No more compromising my worth, no more letting others dictate my life. It was time to reclaim my independence, my self-respect, and my happiness. The Olivia who walked out of that house was not the same one who had entered it years ago. She was stronger, wiser, and ready to face whatever came next, alone if necessary. I stood in the lobby of the law firm, my heart pounding. This was it, the point of no return. I'd spent the last week in a hotel, ignoring Connor's calls and texts, steeling myself for this moment. As I rode the elevator to the 15th floor, I replayed the events that led me here, each floor bringing a new memory of hurt and disappointment. The receptionist ushered me into a plush office where a stern-faced woman sat behind an imposing desk. Mrs. Thompson, she greeted, gesturing for me to sit. I'm Margaret Winters. You're here to discuss divorce proceedings? I nodded, my throat suddenly dry. Yes, I can't continue in my marriage. As we discussed the details, I felt a strange mix of relief and sadness. This was the end of a chapter in my life, but also the beginning of a new one. Halfway through our meeting, my phone buzzed incessantly. Connor's name flashed on the screen. I silenced it, but the interruption had shaken me. Is everything all right? Margaret asked, her eyes sharp. I took a deep breath. Yes, it's just my husband. He doesn't know I'm here. Margaret's expression softened slightly. Mrs. Thompson, are you sure about this? Divorce is a big step. I'm sure, I said, my voice stronger than I felt. I can't live like this anymore. As we wrapped up the meeting, my phone buzzed again. This time it was Ethan. Olivia, where are you? Connor's here at the office looking for you. He seems really upset. My blood ran cold. How did Connor know where I worked? I'd always kept my job a secret from him and Patricia. I have to go, I told Margaret abruptly, gathering my things. I rushed out of the office, my mind racing. As the elevator descended, I tried to calm my nerves. What was Connor doing at my workplace? How much did he know? The doors opened, and I stepped into the lobby, only to come face to face with Connor and Patricia. Olivia, Connor said, his voice a mixture of relief and anger. What's going on? Where have you been? I stood my ground despite the urge to run. I told you, Connor, I'm leaving. I can't do this anymore. Patricia stepped forward, her eyes flashing. Don't be ridiculous, Olivia. You're coming home with us right now. No, I'm not, I said firmly. I'm done letting you control my life. Connor looked bewildered. Control your life? Olivia, what are you talking about? I laughed bitterly. You really don't see it, do you? How your mother has manipulated every aspect of our marriage, how you've always chosen her over me. That's not true, Connor protested weakly. Isn't it? I challenged. Then why are you here with her instead of coming to find me on your own? Connor fell silent, and I saw a flicker of realization in his eyes. Patricia, sensing she was losing control, changed tactics. Olivia, dear, we're just worried about you. You've been acting so strangely lately. Is it stress from work? Maybe you should take some time off. My work is not the problem, I said, my voice rising. My work is the only thing that's kept me sane. Do you want to know the truth, Connor? I'm the one who's been supporting us. My job, my success, it's all been for us, and you never even noticed. The lobby fell silent. Connor's face paled, while Patricia looked like she'd been slapped. What do you mean? Connor stammered. I took a deep breath, years of pent-up frustration pouring out. I mean that while you've been letting your mother run our lives, I've been working my way up in my career. I'm a senior executive now, Connor. I make 3 times what you do. And I've kept it a secret because I knew Patricia would find a way to use it against me, to make me feel small and insignificant like she always does. Patricia's face contorted with rage. You ungrateful little... No, I cut her off. I'm done being grateful for your abuse. I'm done pretending everything is fine when it's not. I'm filing for divorce, Connor. It's over. As I turned to leave, Connor grabbed my arm. Olivia, please. We can work this out. I had no idea. I pulled away, tears stinging my eyes. That's the problem, Connor. You never had any idea, and now it's too late. I walked out of the lobby, leaving Connor and Patricia standing there, shocked and silent. As I stepped into the sunlight, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. The road ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in years, I felt free. The days following my confrontation with Connor and Patricia were a blur of legal meetings and emotional upheaval. I threw myself into work, grateful for the distraction. Ethan had been a rock, offering support without pushing for more. One evening, as I was leaving the office, my phone rang. Patricia's name flashed on the screen. I hesitated, then answered. Olivia. Her voice was uncharacteristically soft. We need to talk, please. Against my better judgment, I agreed to meet her at a nearby cafe. As I walked in, I saw her sitting alone, looking smaller and older than I remembered. Thank you for coming, she said as I sat down. I nodded, wary. What do you want, Patricia? She took a deep breath. I want you to reconsider the divorce. Connor is devastated. I made mistakes, but surely we can work this out. I laughed bitterly. Work it out? After years of your manipulation and Connor's indifference? It's too late for that. Patricia's eyes flashed with a familiar anger, but she quickly composed herself. Olivia, be reasonable. Think about what you're giving up. The stability, the family. The abuse? I cut in. The constant criticism? The feeling of never being good enough? I was trying to help, Patricia protested. I only wanted what was best for Connor, for both of you. I shook my head. No, Patricia, you wanted control. You wanted to keep Connor dependent on you and me in my place. Patricia's facade cracked. And what's so wrong with that? I raised Connor. I know what's best for him. You're just some girl who wormed her way into his life. I'm his wife, I snapped, my voice rising. Or at least, I was. I loved him, supported him, built a life with him, and you couldn't stand it. Patricia leaned forward, her voice low and urgent. Listen to me, Olivia. You don't understand what you're doing. Connor, he's not as strong as you think. He needs me. He needs us. Suddenly I understood. This isn't about Connor at all, is it? It's about you. You're afraid of losing the lifestyle my income provides. Patricia's face paled. That's not true. I just want what's best for my son. No, I said, feeling a strange calm settle over me. You want what's best for you. You've always used Connor as an excuse to control everything around you, but it ends now. I stood up, ready to leave, but Patricia grabbed my arm. You can't do this. You have no idea what you're giving up. The money, the status. I pulled away, my voice steady. I earned that money, Patricia. I built that status. And I did it all while you and Connor belittled and ignored me. I don't need either of you to be successful. Patricia's desperation turned to anger. You ungrateful little bitch. After everything I've done for you, this is how you repay me? By abandoning my son? The cafe fell silent, all eyes on us. I felt a lifetime of pent-up emotions bubbling to the surface. Done for me? I said, my voice dangerously low. You've done nothing but tear me down since the day I married Connor. You've criticized my cooking, my housekeeping, my career. You've manipulated Connor against me at every turn. And now you have the audacity to act like I owe you something? Patricia stood up, her face red with rage. You'll regret this, Olivia. You think you can just walk away? I'll make sure you lose everything in this divorce. Everything. I laughed, a sound that surprised even me. Go ahead and try, Patricia. I'm not afraid of you anymore. As I turned to leave, Patricia called out one last time. He'll never let you go, you know. Connor will fight this divorce every step of the way. I paused at the door, looking back at the woman who had made my life hell for so long. Then let him fight. I'm done being the victim in this story. Walking out of that cafe, I felt lighter than I had in years. The road ahead would be difficult, I knew that. But for the first time, I was ready to face it on my own terms. No more compromises, no more sacrifices. It was time to reclaim my life, whatever the cost. 6 months after my confrontation with Patricia, I stood in my new apartment, surrounded by boxes and the promise of a fresh start. The divorce had been finalized last week, and despite Connor's initial threats, it had gone smoother than I'd expected. My financial success had been my ace in the hole, leaving Patricia and Connor with no leverage. As I unpacked, my phone buzzed. It was Ethan. Hey, I answered, a smile in my voice. How's the unpacking going? He asked. Slowly but surely, I replied. Want to come over and help? There was a pause. Actually, I'm already outside your building. I brought dinner. My heart skipped a beat. Ethan had been a constant support throughout the divorce, but we'd kept things strictly platonic. Until now. I buzzed him up, suddenly nervous. As I opened the door, I saw Ethan standing there, holding takeout bags and wearing a hesitant smile. "I hope this is okay," he said. I pulled him into a hug. "It's more than okay." As we ate, sitting on boxes because I hadn't unpacked my furniture yet, Ethan filled me in on the office gossip. Apparently, my divorce and subsequent promotion had caused quite a stir. "Oh, and you'll never guess who I saw today," Ethan said, his tone cautious. I raised an eyebrow. "Who?" "Connor and Patricia. They were at the bank, looking pretty stressed." I felt a twinge of something. Not regret exactly, but a complex mix of emotions. How did they look? Ethan hesitated. "Not great. Connor looked like he hadn't slept in days, and Patricia, well, she's definitely not living the high life anymore." I nodded, processing this information. Part of me felt a grim satisfaction, but another part felt an unexpected pang of sadness. "Olivia," Ethan said softly, "are you okay?" I took a deep breath. "You know what? I really am. For the first time in years, I feel free." Ethan reached out, taking my hand. "You deserve to be happy, Olivia. You've been through so much." As I looked into his eyes, I felt a warmth I hadn't experienced in a long time. But before I could respond, my phone rang. It was Connor. I hesitated, then answered. "Hello?" Olivia, Connor's voice was strained. I need your help." I closed my eyes, steeling myself. "What is it, Connor?" "It's Mom. She's not doing well. The stress of everything, it's taken a toll on her health. We can't afford her medical bills, and I don't know what to do." I felt a surge of conflicting emotions. Anger at the audacity of him asking for help after everything, pity for Patricia's situation, and a strange sense of power, knowing I held their fate in my hands. "Connor," I said, my voice steady, "I'm sorry about Patricia's health, but I can't help you, not anymore." "But Olivia?" "No, Connor, you and Patricia made your choices. Now you have to live with them, just like I had to live with the consequences of your actions for years." There was a long silence. Then, "I understand. I'm sorry, Olivia, for everything." As I hung up, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. The last tie to my old life had been severed. Ethan was watching me, concern etched on his face. "Everything okay?" I smiled, a genuine, unburdened smile. "Yes, everything is finally okay." I stood up, pulling Ethan with me. "Come on, help me unpack these boxes. I think it's time to start filling this new life with some happy memories." As we worked side by side, laughing and sharing stories, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. The road had been long and painful, but I had emerged stronger, wiser, and truly free. Patricia and Connor's downfall wasn't a victory to celebrate, but a reminder of the importance of independence and self-respect. And as I looked at Ethan, I saw the possibility of a future filled with mutual respect and genuine love. This was my new chapter, my fresh start. And for the first time in years, I was excited about what the future held. The woman who had entered that toxic marriage years ago was gone. In her place stood a stronger, more confident Olivia, ready to face whatever life threw her way. As night fell and the last box was unpacked, I stood at my window, looking out at the city lights. I was no longer Connor's wife or Patricia's daughter-in-law. I was just Olivia. And that, I realized, was more than enough.
Finally, I'm free from that burden. Starting today, my parents are moving in with me at my house. When my parents passed away, my husband Scott demolished our family home and stood in front of its site. He blurted out, "Hurry up and bring the inheritance to our place." I stood there in shock and asked, "What are you talking about? Have you lost your mind?" At his words, I couldn't help but laugh. I realized what this was all about. "Why are you laughing? Don't you understand?" Scott and my in-laws looked at me puzzled. That's when I told them the truth. My name is Amy Jackson. I was born the eldest daughter of ordinary office worker parents. I have one brother, and we were a very normal family. I married Scott when I was 30, and we had 2 kids, balancing work and parenting. I suddenly found myself at 52. My son Eric and daughter Judy had grown up to be adults, each living on their own and starting their careers. Now was the time to relax with my husband. It was an ordinary life, but I was happy. I thought I would continue to age like this. But my simple life changed one winter day. My father was in a car accident and suddenly passed away. He was only 68 at the time. Our whole family was overwhelmed with grief, especially my mother, who was so depressed she couldn't even eat. "Mom, I know it's hard, but you have to eat," I told her again and again. "I know, but I just don't have the appetite. It feels like there's something stuck in my chest," she replied. My brother and I thought she was just emotionally distressed and watched her for a while. However, she rapidly lost weight. In just 3 weeks, worried, I took her to the hospital. The diagnosis from the doctor was shocking. Cancer. The cancer was advanced, and surgery wasn't an option. She had about a year left to live. I hadn't had the chance to really take care of my parents yet, when I thought I had lost my father. Now my mother is facing this illness. I was even more devastated than when my father passed. But I couldn't grieve forever. My brother lived far away and couldn't help, so it was up to me to take care of my mother. I explained to Scott. "I want to live with my mother. I can't leave her alone, both emotionally and physically during her illness." Scott's reaction surprised me. "We just finished dealing with your dad's funeral, and now I have to be dragged into more of your family's issues," he said with a sigh, clearly annoyed. "You don't have to say it like that. Can't you just drive her to the hospital and back? Do we really have to live with her?" I asked. "I think she might feel lonely if it's not okay. Maybe I can just live at my family home for a while," I suggested. Scott became indignant. "And who's going to take care of my meals while you're gone?" "I'll come and cook, of course." "What about cleaning? Who's going to do the laundry?" he demanded. I fell silent. I intended to do what I could, but I couldn't do everything as before. Being confronted with this reality hurts. If someone said I was being selfish for wanting to care for my mother, I wouldn't be able to argue back, I thought to myself. I'm sure my mother, being considerate, would say everything is fine as it is. But I really wanted to do something for my parents, I admitted. "Fine, but I'm not helping with anything," Scott grudgingly said to my silence. His attitude was arrogant, but he had ultimately agreed. "I'm sorry and thank you," I said, although I thought he was being awful. He had agreed to my wish. I suppressed my desire to argue back and thanked him. Despite the trouble, Scott and I started living with my mother at my family home. We had originally been living in a house provided by Scott's employer. Scott was an only child, and since his father really wanted us to live together, we didn't plan on buying our own home. Living in the company housing was more convenient for work, and the rent was only about $11,000 a month, so it wasn't a big burden. Now that we've moved to my family home, we don't have to pay that anymore, and we have more space, I reflected. Living together wasn't all bad for Scott. True to his word, Scott didn't help with anything, but I'm glad I could live with my mother. She seemed energetic, but she often felt weak and spent a lot of time lying down during the day. I prepared her meals, fed her, and managed her medication. It would have been impossible for her to do all that alone, I said, reflecting on those days. "I'm sorry, Emmy. Thank you. It's a big help that you're here with me," my mother said, expressing her gratitude. Many times she was unaware of the harsh words Scott had said about living together, so she was grateful to him too. One evening, after my mother had gone to bed and Scott returned home, I brought up the subject of my mother's treatment while serving dinner. "I don't know what you want me to say. I told you I'm not helping with anything." Scott refused even to listen. I needed someone to vent to, someone to consult. All I wanted was for Scott to listen, I lamented. Even after 2 months, 3 months, Scott's attitude didn't change. He constantly complained about living together, acting as if he was doing a great favor. and his behavior became more obnoxious day by day. But I couldn't say anything against it. Between worrying about my mother and being considerate of Scott, I was becoming more stressed. Around the time of the 2-year prognosis, my mother's condition worsened rapidly, and she was hospitalized. 5 days later, she passed away. Although I had prepared myself mentally, I was devastated. My brother's family and my children came right away and helped a lot. But in times like this, you really want your spouse by your side. However, Scott was laughing and chatting with his parents in a corner, not helping with the funeral preparations at all. My brother had taken the lead role in the preparations, and somehow we got everything ready for the funeral. But Scott, who should have been sitting in the family section, was at the very back of the relative section. "Scott, I want you to sit in the family section," I said. "No, I'm fine here. I'm not a blood relative, after all," he replied. Then his mother chimed in, "He's your husband, but he's not your mother's son. Scott is our son, so he's an outsider, you know. Amy should sit in the family section." Hearing this from my in-laws was painful. I was left speechless. Where I come from, it's common for sons-in-law to sit in the family section at funerals, though this might vary by area. With Scott not in the family section, distant relatives started whispering, wondering if we had divorced. It's one thing for people to gossip, but all this could have been avoided if Scott had just sat there. Feeling a bit upset that Scott wasn't by my side, we still managed to see my mother off peacefully. After the funeral, my brother's family, my children, Scott, and his parents returned to my family home. "Thank you for coming, especially at such a busy time," I sent to my in-laws, offering them some tea. They laughed and replied, "Really, it's something. First your father, now your mother. These funeral expenses are a burden for us too, but at least that's the end of it." I was stunned by their words. What do they mean by that? I couldn't believe they would say such a thing. I forced a smile and excused myself. Then I overheard Scott talking with his parents. "It must have been tough for you, Scott, living with outsiders." "Yeah, dealing with Amy's whims was a pain. A husband shouldn't just follow his wife's demands. If you don't like something, you have every right to refuse," Scott said. I clenched my fists. Their voices laughing and chatting were unbearable. But this wasn't new. Scott's parents had always been insensitive and rude. When Scott and I got married, his mother said, "Couldn't you find someone more attractive?" "I can't expect much for grandchildren," I recalled bitterly. "They say beauty gets boring after 3 days. With Amy, you won't get bored." Scott just laughed, reflecting back. Neither Scott nor his parents had said a single comforting word to me, either at my father's funeral or after my mother's passing. Instead, they ridiculed me. I had felt sorry for imposing on Scott, but now I questioned his behavior as a person. I had been too concerned about Scott while just wanting to do right by my mother. I realized I shouldn't have felt so guilty towards Scott, especially since he wasn't supportive. Still simmering in anger, Scott and his parents continued to laugh and chat in another room. If my brother's family and my kids had heard them, they would have been upset, but fortunately, they were in the kitchen. I was relieved to be the only one who heard Scott and his parents' conversation. Then my mother-in-law spoke up. "Amy," she called. "Yes," I replied, startled. "Can I have this?" she asked. Holding my mother's purse, confused, I stammered, "Oh, well, your mother won't be needing it anymore, right?" Scott suggested, "Take it home. Maybe I'll just keep it," she said, holding up the purse and inspecting it. I couldn't believe her audacity, especially right after the funeral. I took the purse from her and said firmly, "No, you can't." Her expression changed, not because of the purse, but because I, her daughter-in-law, stood up to her. Yet I stood my ground. We're not ready to sort through my mother's belongings yet. We'll distribute her keepsakes among the family later." My mother-in-law turned red with anger. "What do you mean? Are you saying I'm an outsider? You said earlier at the funeral that even Scott was an outsider to my mother. How come Scott is an outsider, but your family isn't?" I retorted. Hearing this, Scott and his father also turned red. "What are you saying? Apologize to Mom. How disrespectful of a daughter-in-law to talk like that." Their commotion drew everyone from the other room. I didn't expect to be called an outsider after all the effort we put into attending the funeral. "Let's go home, Dad," my mother-in-law shouted at me in front of everyone and stormed out of our house. For some reason, even Scott was angry and left with his parents. "What happened? Did you really call your mother-in-law an outsider?" Everyone asked me, having heard only her side taken out of context. It might have seemed like I was the one being harsh, but I explained the situation to everyone, and not a single person blamed me. Grandpa and Grandma should be more considerate of other people's feelings. That's just how Dad, Grandma, and Grandpa have always been. My children sided with me. But I still couldn't forgive those three. Scott hadn't come home for a while since that day, and I hadn't contacted him either. I didn't think I should be the one to apologize, and I wasn't sure if I could forgive him even if he did. But I knew things couldn't stay this way forever. Then one day, Scott came back. "Welcome home," I greeted him, suppressing the anger that flared up at the sight of him. "It's been tough, huh?" His gruff words were an attempt at showing concern, and I was taken aback. "Take the kids and go on a trip. It'll be a good change of scenery for you," he said, handing me travel vouchers. I was speechless. Instead, tears started to stream down my face. It might have been the kids' idea, but I was touched that Scott went along with it. I immediately contacted the kids to plan the trip. "Really? Dad suggested this? It's surprising, isn't it?" The kids were astonished by my proposal. It seemed like it really was a gift from Scott. "I wonder if Dad feels bad about what happened," I said, laughing. I gratefully accepted the travel vouchers from Scott. "I'll be off then. Yeah, take your time. Stay with the kids at their places too. Why not? Really, I can't be away that long. Don't worry about me. I'll relax at my parents'. Just enjoy yourself." With that, Scott sent me off. Judy was happy to have me visit, so before the spa trip, I stopped by her place and then Gary's. I hadn't been able to visit them while caring for my mother, so I helped out by cooking and freezing meals for them. "Mom, you should relax." "But thanks, this really helps," they both said, delighted to have my cooking at home. This opportunity was all thanks to Scott's suggestion. Then came the eagerly awaited spa trip. I spent a relaxing time at the hot springs with my children. The weariness from caregiving and the sorrow of losing my parents seemed to have healed quite a bit. I was away for almost a week, but both my kids returned to their homes with bright smiles. "That was fun. We should thank Dad for once, true. Just this once, but I wonder if he's up to something," Judy jokes. "Don't say that. Dad thought about us in his own way." I laughed when I returned home, planning to share the memories with Scott and start our life anew as a couple. I was speechless. "What? The house is?" I looked around in disbelief. Despite recognizing the location, the family home that should have been there was gone. Then out of nowhere, Scott appeared, followed by his parents. They were grinning at me, standing there dumbfounded. "Scott, what's going on?" I asked with the same sickening smile. "Finally, I'm rid of that baggage. Starting today, my parents are moving in with me at my house," Scott said. "What are you talking about?" I replied, trying to stay calm. "Have you lost your mind? Your family home has been demolished. Bring the inheritance together, quickly, whatever you inherited. It's Scott's now. I realized then that the disappearance of the house was Scott's doing, and it was all for the inheritance. Such betrayal. After thinking about the future on my way home, I was filled with indescribable sadness and anger. But demolishing the house won't go Scott's way. I won't let it. I burst into laughter at the sight of their smirking faces. Why are you laughing? What a weird woman. Has she gone crazy? My mother-in-law said, looking at me as if I were eerie. Facing the three of them, I spoke up. Don't you guys know what you're talking about? I haven't inherited a single penny, so there's no inheritance. After saying that, I burst into laughter again. They had mistakenly thought they'd become rich from the inheritance. Their wild imaginations and actions had me in uncontrollable laughter. What do you mean? Explain yourself. Scott demanded, but I kept my mouth shut. I felt no need to enlighten them. I'm not going to live with strangers. If you want to live together, go ahead alone. Ignoring Scott's question and rejecting his suggestion made my mother-in-law furious. You helped with your parents' housework, but you can't do ours. You're aware of the circumstances, right? I agreed to live together, didn't I? She yelled. I told you I didn't want to live together. Have you forgotten that? I countered them one after another. Also, demolishing the family home like that. There are things you just shouldn't do. I yelled at them and then left. Behind me, Scott's voice called out, "Where are you going?" But I didn't look back. Right now, I needed to find a place to sleep for the night, and I really didn't want to see Scott's face. I immediately consulted a lawyer. Demolishing a house couldn't be that easy. The house was still in my mother's name. As I wondered which company had done it, an unbelievable truth came to light. Scott and his father had demolished it themselves. His father, who worked in demolition, enlisted the help of acquaintances and even rented heavy machinery. The planning was meticulous. Moreover, they even gave me travel vouchers to get rid of me. Tears welled up in my eyes at the realization of being deceived. The frustration was unbearable. Is there any way to punish all three of them? I tearfully explained my situation. The lawyer smiled at me kindly. Scott unlawfully demolished the house in your mother's name. He could be charged with property destruction and held liable for damages. Let's start by demanding a formal apology from Scott and his parents, the lawyer suggested. A few days later, Scott called me furious about the legal notice he received. "What's with this certified letter?" he yelled. "Oh, you got it. You destroyed my precious house, so of course you have to compensate," I replied. Compensate? We said we were moving to my parents' place. I demolished a house that nobody was going to live in. You should be thanking me, not asking for compensation. Now bring the inheritance and come back home, he said arrogantly. Thank you for demolishing my house. Don't make me laugh. And what inheritance? It's not even settled yet, I shouted back. Scott was silent, seemingly taken aback by my anger, which I rarely displayed. The reason I laughed when the house was demolished was exactly this. I had a whole year with my mother. It was obvious that we would discuss matters of inheritance. So I told my brother I didn't want anything and to give it all to him. As a result, he inherited all the cash and stocks. He insisted that I should have the house since he lived far away and couldn't manage it. If I wasn't going to live there, it could be rented out. That was the plan. Either you and your father restore the house to its original state or pay the amount specified in the letter. I was considering settling this amicably. Well, fine. If you can't pay, I'll file a police report and sue you, I declared. I'm sorry. I didn't think you'd get so angry, Scott said, starting to make excuses. Of course I'm angry. What do you expect? I snapped. Scott seemed to think that if my family home was gone, he wouldn't have to live with his parents. His father had always wanted to live together and had a fondness for it. Scott had refused to live together before, citing difficult commutes, but his parents thought I was the one against it. So he convinced them by demolishing my house and making it seem like I'd move in with them with the inheritance. But I couldn't forgive him after hearing such a thing. Please give me a break. I didn't mean any harm, Dad said too. If he's truly sorry, then agree to the settlement, I said and hung up the phone. Scott kept calling and sending messages apologizing. If you're sorry, just transfer the money. I pushed him away. I knew my childhood home couldn't be restored, but this was the only way I could deal with my unbearable feelings. I stayed at Judy's place. My brother's family and my children knew about the situation. Although my brother must have been angry about our house being demolished without his consent, he said, I won't interfere, but I'll help in any way I can. Do what you think is best, Amy. Everyone condemned Scott's actions and supported me. A month passed without any compensation or alimony payment from Scott. During that time, there was no contact from him. I couldn't stay with Judy forever. I wanted to get the money as soon as possible to at least establish a living foundation. Contrary to my wishes, something unbelievable happened. It was revealed by Judy. This apron looks a lot like Grandma's, she said, showing me her smartphone screen. I was surprised when I saw it. It was a listing on a flea market app. The apron Judy mentioned, similar to my mother's, was a unique one I had made for her. What? This is Grandma's apron. I made it, so I'm sure, I said. Judy quickly checked other listings. The seller seemed to have recently joined the app, with no transactions or reviews yet. There were nearly 50 items listed, and to my horror, all of them belonged to my mother. I immediately realized it was Scott. He was the only one who could have taken my mother's belongings after demolishing the house. I called Scott right away. What's this about the app? I asked. Scott responded, sounding annoyed, don't play dumb. You're selling Mom's things without permission, aren't you? Cancel those listings right now, I demanded. Scott, sounding panicked, replied, What? No, it wasn't me. Who else would do such a thing? I'm coming over right now to get everything back, I said and hung up. Then I immediately headed to Scott's parents' house with Judy. Where are Mom's things? I demanded as soon as we arrived, confronting Scott at the door. I don't know anything about it, he stuttered. Tell the truth, Dad. Judy joined me in pressuring Scott. He seemed flustered. Scott's parents noticed our presence and came out. Oh, Judy, you're here. Scott's mom greeted, smiling at the sight of her granddaughter. Angry Judy said, Grandma, tell Dad to tell the truth. The truth. Grandma's belongings that passed away recently. Dad seems to be selling them, Judy said. At Judy's words, Scott's mom burst into laughter. Scott is selling them. That's impossible. I am the one selling them. I felt my blood run cold. Scott probably knew about it, with a look that almost said, This is bad. He turned to his mother. Despite Judy's shock, his mother cheerfully continued, What? It's a lot of work, you know. I have to pack everything carefully and make sure the photos look good. She seemed oblivious to the fact that she was selling stolen goods. Chatting happily about the app, I struggled to restrain myself from lunging at her. Canceled the listings. Those are yours to sell, Judy read with anger and tears in her eyes, pleading with her grandmother. However, Scott's mother seemed displeased. What's the big deal? I finally found a hobby I enjoy. I use the things I can and sell the rest for a little pocket money. It's good for preventing dementia. I'm the only grandma left, so Judy wants me to stay healthy and live long, right?" she said nonchalantly. Pleading with her to stop had no effect. There was no sign of remorse. If talking won't help, then action is the only option. "Judy, let's go." "But it's okay, let's go," I insisted, pulling Judy out of the house and heading straight to the police station. I wasn't planning to file a report for the demolition of the house, but theft was a different story. When I explained to the police that my mother's belongings were being stolen and sold, they acted immediately. Scott's mother's account on the flea market app was suspended. The items wouldn't be sold anymore. I called Scott on the way back from the station. "I had your mother's account stopped. You knew about it, right?" "You're complicit." "No, I filed a police report about this." "Please cooperate with the investigation." Scott became frantic. "What? We're family, right? Withdraw it, please. Family? You still haven't paid any compensation for the house or alimony, and there's no sign of remorse." Faced with my shouting, Scott was taken aback. Despite everything, I still had feelings for Scott, having lived with him for so long. Sighing, I said, "I'll wait for the money, but I won't forgive the theft. Return everything." "And Scott, your father looked quite unwell." "Has he seen a doctor?" "What? I'm not a monster." So just passing on that message, I said and hung up. Scott's father, whom I had just seen, was alarmingly thin and hadn't spoken much. His complexion was more than just pale. It was unnaturally dark. His ill health was obvious, but that family probably hadn't noticed. His wife was nonchalant, selling stolen items, and Scott only acted tough with me. They lacked any real concern for others. The next day, I received a call from Scott's father. Expecting it to be a thank you call, I answered. I got the complete opposite reaction. "What do you mean by treating me like a sick person, planning to dump me in a hospital to get rid of the hassle?" "I need to protect Scott and my wife from you. I'm not going to any hospital," he scolded. It was shocking to be reprimanded when I was just concerned. "Sorry for overstepping. I was just worried," I said. "I'm not frail or short-lived like your parents. Don't make a fool of me," he snapped. I was infuriated by his words. But a few days later, he apparently felt unwell enough to visit the hospital. The diagnosis was terminal cancer. Scott called me in a panic. "Dad's got terminal cancer. What am I going to do?" I just snorted. "I don't know." "What did he say when I suggested going to the hospital?" "He said, I'm not frail or short-lived like your parents, so deal with it yourself." How can you be so heartless, Amy? I never thought you'd be such a person. Did you ever say a single warm word when my mother was sick? Reflect on your own actions. I said it, hung up as expected. Scott's father passed away soon after as a human being. I didn't want to harbor negative feelings towards the deceased, but recalling everything that had been done and said, I couldn't shed a tear. After his funeral, his will was found. Despite all this talk of not being short-lived, he had made thorough preparations. The house goes to the grandson Eric. The rest of the estate is to be divided between my wife and eldest son. I was surprised to see Eric's name. Scott's father had always favored him, wanting to live with him. He must have wanted Eric to have the house even after his death. It was a nuisance for Eric to renounce the inheritance. You don't need that house, do you? I told Eric, but he was happy to receive it. Inheriting the house was more of a burden than a benefit due to inheritance tax. But if he was pleased, I had no right to say anything. Following the will, Eric inherited the house. He's our successor after all, she said. Well, that's not wrong. I felt a bit sad as if Eric had been taken from me. Then something unbelievable happened. Come over to our house. Scott's call prompted me to head straight to his parents' house. When I arrived, I saw Scott's mother and Scott himself standing in front of their house, stunned just like I once had been. The site was filled with heavy machinery and trucks labeled with demolition company names. Workers were tearing down their house right before our eyes. "What's going on?" "It's my house. I can do what I want with it," Eric said, appearing from somewhere, looking satisfied as he watched the demolition. "Eric, what are you doing? Stop this right now," Scott shouted. "Stopping it now won't make it livable anyway," Eric replied. Scott's mother and Scott were begging Eric, but Eric just laughed. "Did you forget what Grandpa and Dad did to Mom? Grandma, you were awful to Mom too, right? Did you apologize?" Eric's smile turned into a sharp glare at Scott's mother and Scott. They fell to their knees as the heavy machinery continued to noisily dismantle their house. I finally felt relieved seeing the scene. Later, Scott finally paid the damages and compensation from the inherited assets. The stolen items that Scott's mother took from my mother were retrieved by Eric and safely returned to me. "You always have me and Judy," Eric said, and I finally shed tears of relief. Scott's mother and Scott, having lost their house and left with no money, were now living in a company house again. Scott and I had moved out of the company house, but now Scott and his mother had to return, becoming the subject of rumors. I explained the whole truth to Scott's colleagues' wives, who we were on good terms with. Scott and his mother will likely have a hard life in the company housing, but it's their own doing. After Scott's retirement, they'll be forced to save up for a new place to live. I sometimes think about asking my friend how Scott and his mother are living now, just to have something to talk about. After that, I continued to stay at Judy's house. Then Eric got engaged to be married. He was planning to build a house. The land of the former family home sold for a decent amount, and I was glad to see that even that house served a purpose. "Mom, come live with us," Eric offered. His fiancée welcomed me warmly. Since I couldn't keep relying on Judy, who lived alone indefinitely, I decided to take Eric up on his offer. I am thinking of living happily with my new family, determined not to become a mother-in-law like my own mother-in-law. Ever since I ended up in a wheelchair due to an accident 3 years ago, my husband and mother-in-law have become much colder towards me. One night, my husband said something I couldn't believe. "Sorry, but could you please leave this house for a moment?" "What? What do you mean?" I asked, shocked. "I mean exactly what I said. My mother and I talked it over and decided," he replied. "Are you saying you want a divorce?" I asked, trying to understand. "Yes, that's it. I've been thinking about it for a long time now. You can't earn any money, so I don't need you," he said harshly, as if he was squeezing blood from a stone. "I understand. Thanks for everything and thanks for leaving me with nothing," I said, getting up. I left, knowing it would take them some time to realize the meaning of my words. My name is Linda Gray. After graduating from university, I have been working at my current company for 7 years. "Well then, I'll be heading out." "Thanks for your hard work," a colleague replied as I closed my laptop and got up from my seat. I looked at the clock by the window and saw it was already 4 hours past my regular working time. An afternoon meeting had run late, and I had been preparing for a conference and responding to emails, which took longer than I expected. I left the office, got in the elevator, and went down to the first floor. As I walked through the automatic glass doors of the entrance, I saw that the sun had already set. I checked the train schedule on my phone as I left the company gate and headed to the nearest station. On my way, I saw 2 of my husband's colleagues walking in the same direction. I wondered if Jack, my husband, was already home. We had stopped talking about work at home recently, so I had no idea if he was busy. Talking about work at home had been making Jack cranky, so we naturally stopped discussing it. As I rode the train home, I stared out the window, lost in thought, watching the scenery go by. When I was dating Jack, we used to finish work at the same time so we could go home together. But for the past year or two, our schedules have been completely different. On the train, I noticed a young couple near the door, maybe college students, having a fun conversation about a movie they saw recently. Their happy scene reminded me of my own past, and I had to close my eyes tightly to stop the emotions from overwhelming me. "I'm home," I called out as I opened the front door, took off my shoes, and saw the neatly lined up shoes in the entrance. It seemed everyone else was already home. I heard the living room door open behind me and the sound of slippers coming closer. "Welcome home, Linda. You were late today," my mother-in-law, Jessica, said warmly. "I'm home, mother-in-law. I'll start preparing dinner right away," I replied. "Oh no, you don't have to rush. You're tired from working overtime, aren't you?" she said kindly. "Not really," I said cheerfully. "The afternoon meeting ran late, but things should settle down soon." I walked with Jessica to the living room. After getting married, it was just Jack and me. But last year, when his father got sick and was hospitalized, we moved into his parents' home and have been living as a family of 4 ever since. "Welcome back, Linda. You've had a tough day, haven't you?" My father-in-law, who was reading the newspaper on the living room sofa, greeted me warmly. "I'm back," I replied with a smile. Last year, he had a sudden brain hemorrhage and needed emergency surgery. While his condition was serious for a while, he has fully recovered after rehabilitation. He's calm and friendly, and I liked talking to him. Since the first day we met, he used to be the head of the finance department before he retired, and he often gives me useful advice on managing the household budget. When I visited, we finished preparing dinner and gathered around the table as a family. Jessica mentioned that Kelly, who came over for lunch the other day, had a daughter named Jelite who had grown a lot. "Kids grow up faster when they're not yours," I responded. "Kelly is as beautiful as ever, and having a child really makes her look even more graceful," Jessica continued. "I guess so," I replied. "Kelly is Jessica's niece and Jack's cousin." Jessica often seems disappointed that Jack and I don't have children. She's not very happy that I continue to work after our marriage, and often hints that she would like us to have a child whenever we meet. Honestly, I've always found it hard to deal with Jessica, especially since we started living together. She tends to bring up the topic of having children, especially on days when I come home late from work. "You could have had a child if you had started earlier, Linda, but I suppose it can't be helped because you're busy with work," she said. I nodded along, feeling uncomfortable. I glanced at Jack, who was quietly eating his meal without looking at me. Jack and I were colleagues at the same company and got married in our 3rd year of dating. We were told that it would be best if I became a housewife if we had a child, but we have both continued working since our marriage and haven't had any children. Both of us have wanted a child and tried everything from herbal medicine to medical tests, but nothing has worked. Despite a sense of loneliness, we decided to keep living as a couple and focus on our work. However, I started to feel a distance growing between Jack and me. We got married out of love and promised to make each other happy, but our relationship has gradually become cold. I think it started when Jack began having trouble at work. He didn't tell me anything, but I heard from a senior colleague in his department that Jack was struggling because he couldn't keep up with his peers. Jack is a gentle person who doesn't handle pressure well and tends to push himself too hard. I knew, without him saying anything, that he was feeling anxious and frustrated about the situation. But whenever I tried to offer him support, he would refuse to talk about his worries, insisting that he was fine and that I shouldn't worry. So he continued to keep his feelings to himself. I couldn't push him to open up, and I felt helpless that I couldn't be there for him. Even so, on our days off, we would make an effort to travel together or spend a relaxing day at home, enjoying our time together as a couple. When I felt drained from our unsuccessful attempts to have a baby, Jack was always there quietly supporting me. That's why, even if I couldn't solve Jack's problems directly, I wanted to be by his side providing comfort and peace. The turning point came when I got a promotion at work. I was recognized for my achievements on the projects I worked on and was one of the fastest among my peers to get promoted. "That's amazing. Congratulations, Linda," Jack had said. I can't forget the look on his face when he congratulated me. I was so touched that I could only manage a simple thank you. As my work got busier, the distance between Jack and me seemed to grow. We spent less time together, our conversations became fewer, and when my income surpassed Jack's, we hardly even made eye contact anymore. I would watch Jack as he finished his meal in silence, and then left the table without a word. I can't help but wonder if I hadn't been afraid of being pushed away and had tried harder to support him, would we have a different relationship now? When I opened my eyes, the first thing I saw was the bright white light of a fluorescent bulb. After blinking a few times, I looked around and realized I was lying in a hospital bed. I looked down and saw an IV in my arm, and both of my legs were wrapped in layers of bandages and casts. The moment I tried to move, an intense pain shot through my body. Tears welled up in my eyes from the sheer pain. My body felt as heavy as lead, and it seemed impossible to move. What on earth had happened? I tried to recall my memories leading up to that moment. I remembered going to work as usual, finishing a meeting and report, and leaving work on time for the first time in a while. After leaving the office, I was heading towards the station, which was busier than usual because of rush hour. Then I heard the screeching sound of sudden brakes from behind me. I turned around and felt a violent shock. I realized I'd been hit by a car. Fear and pain spread through my body. I worried about the condition of my body. Now I heard footsteps approaching, and suddenly the curtain around my bed opened. "Oh, Mrs. Gray, you're awake." "But you shouldn't try to get up yet," said a young female nurse in a rushed tone. "I understand you're confused, but your doctor will explain everything shortly. Please stay calm for now." "Ah, okay," I replied, and the nurse left in a hurry. A few minutes later, the doctor arrived and explained what happened. Apparently, a truck driven by a sleepy driver crashed onto the sidewalk, and I was hit from behind. I had been rushed to the hospital immediately after the accident, and it had been about half a day since the surgery. "Excuse me, but have you contacted my family?" I asked. "Yes, we have informed your husband and his parents about the accident, and that the surgery went well. However, they seem to be out somewhere and can't come right away," the doctor said. "I see. Thank you," I replied. Jack was away on a business trip, and his parents had been on an overseas vacation since last week. From the doctor's tone, I could imagine their reaction to the news. Even though they were out, it didn't sound like they responded as you would expect when being told a loved one has been in an accident. I laughed bitterly, thinking about Jack's reaction. It didn't seem like he would be worried about me. The doctor continued to explain that while there were no life-threatening injuries, the damage to both of my legs was severe. They said the chances of walking again were not good. As I listened, it felt surreal, like they were talking about someone else, not my own body. Jack visited the hospital 4 days after the accident. It was surprising to see his pained expression when he saw me covered in injuries, lying in the hospital bed. "Sorry," he said, looking genuinely distressed. "I'm late." "It's fine. Don't worry about it," I replied. "I'm sorry for interrupting your business trip." It had been a while since we last talked, and the atmosphere was awkward. Our conversation stopped, and we both avoided eye contact. Jack then excused himself to talk to the doctor, leaving the room. I couldn't bring myself to call out to him and just watched him leave. It's been 2.5 years since the accident. My legs are still disabled from the accident, and I've been confined to a wheelchair. Since the accident happened while I was leaving work, I managed to stay with the company for a while, but it became too hard to continue, so I resigned about 5 months ago. Since then, I've been spending my time at home. But a few things have been bothering me. One thing is Jessica's attitude towards me. It's gotten much harsher than before. Linda, do you have a moment? Yes, of course. I'm about to head out, but could you fold the laundry for me? It's just folding, so you can do it even if you can't move your legs, right? Yes, please be careful on your way out. Well then, please get it done. Ever since I started staying at home, I've been getting more and more snide comments from Jessica. She seems unhappy that her daughter-in-law is at home all day and not working. Now every time we meet, her requests come with a side of sarcasm. I sag as I fold the laundry. The other thing that's been on my mind is Jack's job. According to a former colleague, Jack seems to be struggling at work more than ever. He's being outperformed by younger colleagues and subordinates who joined after him. He seems to be viewed as a burden by those around him. He used to keep to himself after coming home from work, but lately he's been taking out his frustrations on me more often. Must be nice, Linda. You don't have to worry about work relationships anymore, and you get to eat without having to work. I heard from Mom that you've been lazing around all day doing nothing. I wish I could have that lifestyle just once. I no longer saw any trace of the kind Jack I once knew. His sarcastic remarks left me feeling sad for the man he had become. One night he said, "I hate to ask this, but could you please leave this house?" I was at a loss for words, unable to understand the meaning of his abrupt statement. What? What do you mean? I mean exactly what I said. My mom and I have talked it over. And excited, I turned to look at Jessica, who was sitting next to Jack. Linda, ever since you quit your job, you haven't contributed to the living expenses or helped around the house. You've just been staying at home all the time. To be blunt, it's a nuisance for you to stay here any longer, she said. I don't. Don't you think it's rude to live off others without making any contribution to their household? Jessica continued, a triumphant look in her eyes. Jack remained silent, avoiding eye contact with me. Jack is asking me to leave. Is this your way of saying you want a divorce? Yeah, that's it. I've been thinking about it for a long time, he replied. So after all this time, you have no feelings left for me. Why would there be? Of course not, Jack said, his words spilling out like a flood. Do you know how miserable I feel every time I see your face? You must have looked down on me, thinking you were better than me. Every day, it felt like the threads of our relationship were unraveling one by one. I tolerated you because you were contributing to the household expenses, but things have changed. Now you're just someone who neither works nor has money, he said, clenching his fist, his words cutting like a knife. I don't need you now that you can't earn money. The last thread snapped. I understand, I said for the first time. Jack looked at me. But I have a condition. All the divorce procedures will be handled through a lawyer. If you agree to that, I will pack my things and leave within the week. Sure, that's fine, right, Jack? Jessica said. Jack nodded silently. Well then, that's how it is, Jack, I said, jolting him out of his silence. Thank you for everything up until now, and thank you for leaving me with nothing, I said before walking out. A few days had passed since I left the house. When I checked my phone, I saw a call from Jack. I stared at the screen for a few seconds before picking up. Yes, Linda, I'm sorry. Could you please come back? He said. What's this all about all of a sudden? I asked, surprised by his change of heart. I heard from my dad that even after you quit your job, you've been covering our living expenses. You've been investing since you were working, haven't you? And now you're able to cover living expenses with the money you make from dividends, Jack said, his voice tinged with regret. Yes, that's right. So what? I responded, not sure where he was going with this. I left the household budget to you and my dad, so I didn't know anything about our finances. I thought we were living off my income, but now I realize we were mostly living off yours. I really regret saying such terrible things. I'm sorry, Jack continued, his tone softer, almost pleading. After we got married, we merged our finances, and I began investing my own money. My father-in-law encouraged me to invest, and he was the only one I talked to about financial management and investments. Jack never showed any interest in our finances, leaving it all to his dad and me. So what am I supposed to do if I come back? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Well, my dad says that with my income alone, it's impossible to maintain the same standard of living we've had. Besides, I'm not confident that I can keep my current job for much longer. I'm struggling at work, and I don't know how much longer I can hold on, Jack admitted, his voice breaking. So what you're saying is you want me to come back so we can live comfortably? I asked, my anger rising. You really have some nerve. There was a long pause on the other end of the line, and I could hear Jack breathing heavily, trying to find the right words. The reason I never said anything before is because, even though my feelings have changed, I believed that deep down you still cared about me. But you're not the Jack I once loved anymore, I said, my voice trembling with emotion. That's not true, Jack said quickly, his voice full of desperation. I still care about you. I've just been going through a lot, and I've made mistakes. I know I've hurt you, but I want to make things right. Please come back. I sighed, feeling the weight of the years and the pain we had both endured. Jack, it's not that simple. You've hurt me deeply, and it's not just about the money. It's about how you've treated me, how you've taken me for granted. You've become someone I don't recognize anymore. I know, and I'm truly sorry. I've been a fool, and I've let my pride get in the way. I miss you, and I miss us. I want to make things right, but I need you to help me. Please, Linda, come back, Jack pleaded. I need time to think, I said, feeling the tears well up in my eyes. You can't just expect me to come back and pretend everything is okay. We need to talk about this. Really talk and figure out if we can find a way forward together. Okay, I understand, Jack said, his voice barely above a whisper. Take all the time you need. Just know that I'm willing to do whatever it takes to make things right. As I hung up the phone, I felt a mix of emotions. Part of me wanted to believe Jack, to believe that he could change, and that we could find a way to rebuild our life together. But another part of me was deeply hurt and uncertain if I could ever trust him again. I knew that whatever decision I made, it wouldn't be easy, and it would take a lot of time and effort to heal the wounds that had been inflicted over the years. I still love you, Linda, Jack said, his voice full of desperation. There's no need for you to say anything more, I replied firmly. All my feelings for you have vanished. The last time we talked, I made it clear that whatever happens to you and your family from now on, I just don't care. Thank you for leaving me with no trust, no memories, nothing at all, I continued, my voice cold and unyielding. Wait, Linda, please forgive me, Jack pleaded, his voice breaking. I'll handle all the divorce arrangements through my lawyer. "Don't ever contact me again," I said, my tone final. I hung up the phone and immediately blocked his number, cutting off any further communication. After that, the divorce process moved quickly, and I made a clean break from Jack. The only person I still kept in touch with was my father-in-law. One day, my phone rang. It was my father-in-law. "So have you had any trouble living alone since you split up with Jack?" he asked kindly. "No, not particularly," I replied, feeling a bit relieved to talk to someone who genuinely cared about my well-being. "That's good to hear." "I'm sorry for the trouble we caused you, Linda," he continued. When I heard what happened from Jack and my wife, I was so angry that I couldn't help but shout. I shouldn't have ignored the terrible way my wife and son treated you for so long. "I'm truly sorry that I didn't do more to help," he said, his voice filled with regret. "It's okay, sir. Please don't worry about it," I replied, trying to ease his guilt. Actually, I caused some trouble too. After I left, things didn't go well at the house. Even without my income, Jack and Jessica kept living extravagantly without cutting back on their lifestyle. They ended up pawning their belongings and even went into debt, I continued. My father-in-law, frustrated with their irresponsible behavior, recently divorced his wife. "I see this as a good chance to rethink my life," I continued. "I can live just fine with my current lifestyle, and I want to take on new challenges. I feel optimistic about the future, even though things have been tough." "That's the spirit," my father-in-law said, a hint of pride in his voice. "You've always been strong, Linda. I have no doubt that you'll come out of this even stronger." After hanging up, I reflected on how much my life had changed. I had always been the one to keep our household running smoothly, managing our finances, and making sure everything was in order after we got married and combined our finances. I began investing my own money with the encouragement and guidance of my father-in-law. Jack had never taken an interest in our finances, leaving everything to his father and me. Since the divorce, I've had to make some adjustments, but overall, I've managed well. I've learned to live within my means, cutting back on unnecessary expenses and focusing on what truly matters. I've also started taking on new challenges, exploring new hobbies, and reconnecting with old friends. It hasn't been easy, but I found a sense of independence and self-reliance that I hadn't realized I was missing. Reflecting on my relationship with Jack, I couldn't help but feel a mix of sadness and relief. We had once been so in love, but over time, our relationship had deteriorated. The pressure from his job, the expectations from his family, and our struggles to have a child had all taken their toll. Jack had changed, becoming someone I no longer recognized. His coldness and lack of support had driven a wedge between us, and no matter how much I tried to reach out to him, he had pushed me away. When I finally made the decision to leave, it was the hardest thing I had ever done. But now looking back, I realized it was also the best decision for both of us. Jack needed to face his own issues, and I needed to find my own path. The divorce proceedings were straightforward, thanks to the help of my lawyer and the support of my father-in-law. He had always been kind to me, treating me with respect and offering his wisdom and advice on financial matters. Even after the divorce, he remained a source of support, checking in on me regularly and offering his assistance whenever I needed it. I learned that after I left, the household fell into chaos without my financial support and management. Jack and Jessica continued to spend recklessly, refusing to cut back on their lavish lifestyle. They eventually had to pawn their belongings and even went into debt. My father-in-law, frustrated with their irresponsibility and fed up with the constant stress, decided to divorce Jessica. Now I see this as a chance to reassess my life and set new goals. I've been focusing on my own happiness and well-being, taking things one day at a time. I found new strength within myself and a renewed sense of purpose. I've also started to explore new opportunities, whether it's a new hobby or a potential career change. Life may not have turned out the way I expected, but I'm determined to make the most of it. As I laughed cheerfully with my father-in-law over the phone, I felt a sense of relief and hope. The future is uncertain, but I'm ready to face it with a positive attitude and an open heart. I'm grateful for the lessons I've learned and the support I've received, and I'm excited to see where this new chapter of my life will take me. Divorce papers had been duly filed. When it came to dividing the property, I made the decision to claim the house. Despite my insistence, Ben dismissed any notion that he could contest it. Uttering those final words, he abruptly left the hospital room, indifferent to my pleas for him to wait, and my desire for a meaningful conversation. That was how I found myself discarded, even in the midst of battling a serious illness like cancer. Loneliness enveloped me, but strangely, the negative emotions that once lingered in my heart began to dissipate. It was as if my love for Ben had evaporated at that moment. I acknowledged that Ben, who had insulted me and consistently acted selfishly, deserved some form of retribution. I began calmly strategizing my revenge. My name is Wendy Morgan, a 50-year-old housewife living with my husband Ben. Our marriage, devoid of children, had spanned 30 years. Initially, I believed we were a supportive couple, but an irreparable rift had developed between us. In my understanding of marriage, partners should support, challenge, and complement each other. However, this was absent in our relationship. Returning from an errand, I found Ben demanding dinner immediately, oblivious to the continuous responsibilities of a housewife. Even on his days off, he prioritized his own leisure over supporting me. Over the years, Ben never extended a helping hand, regardless of how busy or unwell I was. His perception of a housewife's role seemed limited to constant labor, and he never allowed me to rest, even during illness. I had hoped for a marriage built on mutual support, but Ben's actions contradicted that ideal. The early days saw me attempting to bridge the gap, but Ben remained resolute, asserting his belief that as a housewife, I had no grounds to complain. Love had long faded, and I didn't anticipate unwavering support in everything. Still, I longed for simple kindness during challenging days. Ben's refusal to acknowledge my humanity and hardships widened the rift between us, turning our marriage joyless and meaningless. I grasped the situation more acutely than anyone else. It was during this realization that I sensed something awry with my health. While I had always been prone to illness, this time felt distinctly different. I promptly reached out to my father, who escorted me to the hospital where I received the diagnosis of cancer. Fortunately, it was detected early, and the doctor assured me that I could commence treatment immediately. Eager to begin the healing process, I implored my father to bring only the essentials from home. Hastily, I navigated through the hospital admission procedures, unable to meet Ben that day due to his work commitments. I conveyed the disquieting news to him through a brief message, informing him, "Cancer has been found, and I'm being hospitalized for treatment immediately." In these moments of anxiety about the uncertain future, Ben's image crept into my thoughts. Despite my belief that my love for him had waned, a latent desire to face him properly and continue our life together as a couple lingered deep within my heart. Even though Ben had consistently been aloof and indifferent, I envisioned a scenario where, now that I was weakened, he might express concern and ask, "Are you okay?" I yearned for some warm words and would have been content with just one visit. I wondered if he struggled with meals and household chores in my absence. I felt remorse for not being able to fulfill the household duties I had always taken for granted. However, as days passed in the hospital, Ben never visited. He had read my message, and yet there was no expression of concern, not even a simple reply acknowledging the situation. His apparent indifference, despite my serious illness, shook me to the core, causing profound pain. Realizing the futility of my expectations, I decided to stop anticipating anything from Ben. With this newfound mindset, I faced the grueling battle against the illness. The treatment was as demanding as expected, marked by enduring pain and suffering. The medication's side effects took a toll on my body, leading to many sleepless nights filled with discomfort. There were moments when I contemplated giving up on treatment, allowing my deteriorating body to take its course and end my life. However, each time I felt this way, the encouraging words from my parents, reassuring me that I was doing great and that things would surely get better, compelled me to summon strength and endure until today. Then on a day when I was particularly unwell, lying in bed and staring blankly at the ceiling, the door to my room unexpectedly swung open. It wasn't the day for my parents to visit, and I couldn't help but wonder who had entered. The identity of the visitor became clear as I shifted my gaze and saw Ben standing there. Had he finally come to visit me, genuinely concerned about my condition? As he looked at my emaciated face with hollow cheeks, a whirlwind of emotions left me speechless. Would he come to dislike me even more? Without displaying any concern for my state, Ben sat on a chair next to the bed, stared at me, and laughed. "So this is how bad one can look with cancer, huh? You don't even look like a woman anymore." His words made me feel as if the blood had drained from my face. These were words that should never be said to someone fighting cancer. I didn't want him to say anything more, but unaware of my feelings, Ben continued with even more hurtful words. "Ever since you've been hospitalized and not at home, every day has been like heaven. The house is a mess, but I don't even have to go back there. Life is so comfortable without you." His heartless words reopened my wounds. Why must I be subjected to such cruel words? Why is there not a single word of concern from him? Although I wanted to vehemently criticize Ben, my weakened body couldn't move as I wished, and all I could do was silently accept his brutal words. I looked at Ben with a vacant gaze, and noticing my stare, he laughed condescendingly. Then suddenly, saying, "Oh yeah, by the way," he uttered unbelievable words. "I've already filed the divorce papers. I'll be taking the house. As for the property division, you hardly have any right to refuse." The moment I heard those words, my vision blurred and twisted. Did he file the divorce papers without even consulting me? Why? As I was at a loss for words, Ben continued to speak. "I've really fallen for someone. She's 20 years younger, but I'm serious about her. I plan to be with her, so you're in the way." The realization that he was having an affair raced through my mind. However, Ben, having said what he wanted, began preparing to leave. "Wait a minute," I said, but Ben paid no attention. There was clearly no love left for me in his heart. The realization was so painful that it didn't matter anymore. "I see, I understand," I said, and Ben left the hospital room with a pleased laugh. After that, I endured my treatment with even more determination than before. Despite the hardships, I focused my will, resolved to completely cure my cancer and regain my health. 2 days passed like this. It might sound short, but for me, unable to sleep properly at night, those 2 days felt very long. I wondered if the divorce Ben mentioned really happened, or if he had said it just to unnerve me. The uncertainty was unbearable, but somehow I managed to continue my treatment. In fact, I had a trump card to completely bring down Ben. Even Ben, who seemed almost inhuman, would be thrown into chaos once he realized it. If I panicked, he would surely try to contact me in some way. While waiting with this thought, Ben's call came in. Thinking it improper to answer in the hospital room, I pretended not to notice, but Ben persistently kept calling. Even on silent mode, the continuous calls were too annoying. I'm in the hospital room, and it's inconvenient to have my phone ringing, so please don't call. I sent this message. The calls finally stopped, but then came texts like, "Please let me talk to you just once." "Please, I was wrong about everything. I'll apologize properly." Apparently, he had resorted to messaging since I wasn't answering his calls. All his words seemed like self-defense. Probably, Ben realized why I accepted the divorce so easily. "Can I come over there now?" Faced with my silence, Ben seemed to have reached his limit and sent that message. Honestly, facing Ben now amidst my grueling battle with illness felt like nothing but pain. But if I refused, he would probably keep calling, so I replied, "Do as you like." My revenge was about to begin. Ben, who had unjustly treated me for so long and divorced without consent, deserved severe punishment that would make him despite his life. I had been eagerly anticipating the moment when I could bring him down to the depths of despair. "Hey, what the hell is this all about?" Ben entered the room with a shout, his tone suggesting a palpable sense of panic. To an outsider, it might seem like he was overreacting, but given the circumstances, it was natural for Ben to be agitated. After all, I had been concealing an incredibly important secret, and the critical moment had arrived. "I had no idea that you had assets worth $10 million. Why didn't you tell me?" He spoke, placing my passbook on the desk, clearly displaying a deposit of over $10 million. "I never mentioned it because you never asked," I said. "How could I imagine a housewife like you having so much money? If I knew you had this much, I wouldn't have divorced you." That's not my problem. It's Ben's fault for divorcing me without proper confirmation. Stop with the pointless excuses. Despite his domineering behavior and divorcing me without my consent, Ben couldn't stop his selfish remarks upon discovering my assets. "Why didn't you tell me?" "I wouldn't have divorced you if I knew." I decided to reveal the truth to the selfish man. The truth is, I accumulated this fortune of over $10 million through investments. I started to fill my spare time, and it was my parents who suggested, "Why don't you try investing?" Our family life was comfortable, even on Ben's salary alone, but I wanted to contribute to our finances in some way. My father, knowledgeable about investments, immediately taught me diligently when I expressed interest. Thanks to his guidance, I started with the hope of making even a small profit and continued investing steadily. I made my first investment 5 years ago, and since then I rapidly improved, becoming capable of earning significant amounts of money through investments. Even my father was astonished, saying, "I never expected you to grow this much." The profits I generated over these 5 years are the $10 million recorded in the passbook. Ben actually brought it. I was planning to tell you when the timing was right, but then I got cancer. You divorced me without listening to anything I had to say. I never intended to keep this wealth a secret forever. Once I overcame my battle with cancer and could return to my normal life, I planned to tell Ben about this $10 million. I had originally intended to share it with him, envisioning that we could continue our life as a couple and use it when necessary. However, Ben selfishly chose to divorce before I could reveal this financial secret. Now that we're strangers, it feels odd to disclose it to him. Given this outcome, the entire $10 million probably belongs to me. As I recounted my story, Ben's face flushed, and he began shouting, "If I knew you had this much money, I wouldn't have divorced you. It's your fault for keeping it a secret. So pay me $10 million in the property division. You need to atone for the sin of keeping secrets from your husband. Whether he was panicking over the reality of such a vast fortune or frustrated that he couldn't get his hands on it, Ben started making unrealistic demands. In response, I unintentionally laughed, then yelled at me, "What are you laughing at? Stop belittling me." "I've always been annoyed by your attitude. I never thought you'd be so cunning to have such a fortune as a wife. A wife's assets belong to her husband. You have to give me this $10 million. I never intended to keep this secret forever. I was planning to tell you, but you divorced me first. Stop making excuses. It's all your fault for keeping secrets." Without any recollection of making excuses, Ben became more enraged with each word I spoke, blaming and berating me. His shouting was too much for my head, still recovering from illness, and I couldn't bear it. Realizing it was futile to continue talking with Ben, who wouldn't accept my words and would surely try to make me the villain, I quickly ended it. "Enough is enough. You divorced me of your own accord, right? Who filed the divorce papers without my consent? I always thought your behavior was terrible, but I never imagined you could be so cruel. To think a person could feel this much frustration." Now my heart was filled, not with the pain of battling cancer, but with resentment towards Ben. He should have realized that shouting this loudly would affect my weakened body. More than that, I couldn't suppress my anger towards this selfish person who sat arrogantly beside my bed, accusing me with words worn from his self-centered thoughts. Do you know what I thought when I found out I had cancer? I thought that answering him might make Ben worry about me a little, be kinder to me, and reconsider his feelings. Instead, he didn't even come to visit me in the hospital. When he finally showed up, he told me he had filed for divorce without my consent and that he would take the house. How could he be so selfish and then come here criticizing me for having substantial assets? I said it many times. I never intended to keep it a secret forever. I was planning to find the right time to tell you. You destroyed that chance with your own hands. I had never blamed Ben this much before. I had always forgiven his selfish behavior, thinking we were a couple who should support each other. I never scolded or reprimanded him, always enduring for his sake. But the reason I could endure and keep going was that I had love for Ben. I truly loved him. Now I don't have any love left for him. All I feel is uncontrollable anger and disbelief towards Ben, who only speaks selfishly. How can someone be so self-centered? What kind of upbringing leads to such a lack of empathy? After all, a person who indulges in an affair and divorces without consent can't possibly have serious thoughts. I was too stunned to speak, realizing it was futile to harbor any doubts. Please, my girlfriend found out you have $10 million and says she'll divorce me if I don't get it from you. If I don't get this money, I'll be all alone. You still love me, right? Don't you want to help the person you love? So Ben's mistress also knows about my $10 million fortune. He must have carelessly told her. From Ben's story, it seems his mistress is also quite obsessed with money. Birds of a feather flock together, I guess. As much as Ben and his mistress seem to be a match, I couldn't care less about him. No matter how much suffering comes his way, it has nothing to do with me anymore. Please, I'll do anything. Just give me the $10 million. Otherwise, I'll suffer. Please help me. I had never seen Ben so desperate. Ben's expression seemed so ridiculous that I couldn't help but laugh. At the same time, I felt disappointed and miserable, realizing he had never been this desperate about anything related to me. The more we talked, the colder my feelings for Ben became. I realized that talking to him anymore was pointless. No more dealing with this rotten man could possibly lead to my happiness. I felt foolish for suffering and hoping during my illness that he might come and speak kindly to me one day, oblivious to my feelings. Then continued to plead, "Please, I'm begging you. Help me." But I couldn't bear to hear his words any longer. "Please leave now," I said. Then started to plead with a look of desperation. Even that was noisy and unpleasant to me. I pressed the nurse call button, explained the situation, and asked the nurse to get rid of Ben. A security guard came and forcibly removed him from the room. "Please listen to me. I need you," he shouted until the moment he was thrown out. But I no longer accepted any of his words. Afterwards, he visited the hospital many times, but the nurses, knowing the situation, never let him near my room again. According to a friend, Ben, unable to get the $10 million, disappointed his mistress and was promptly divorced. Now left alone, as for me, I continued to confront my cancer with determination and finally recovered and was discharged. The relief of overcoming my difficult battle with cancer and the newfound energy I felt were more precious than anything. Now I'm living a peaceful and relaxed life, gradually using the assets I grew through investments. It seems my mother-in-law got wind that we'd bought a house when she called out of the blue with a shocking proposal. On the other end of the line, I could hear my sister-in-law's amused laughter as my mother-in-law expressed her desire to move in with us. Does she think her laughter is unnoticed? Honestly, living with my mother-in-law and the rest of the family is the last thing I want. I thought my husband felt the same way, but now that they know about our new home, are they assuming that we'll all live together? The thought that my husband might agree with them fills me with dread, but I am determined not to give in to their plans. If they are trying to manipulate me, I'm ready to turn the tables. Reflecting on my past challenges, I vowed to get even. I am Nancy Deborah, 32 years old, and an employee at a major financial corporation. I married Mason 4 years ago. We haven't started a family yet for specific reasons, but it's a mutual decision we take seriously. Mason and I are dedicated to our careers, striving for progress every day. We plan to settle our professional lives first, then focus on building a home and a stable environment for our future children. We've decided to revisit the idea of having kids once our careers are more established, a decision we've made sincerely, sharing our true feelings and thoughts. Now, as we prepare for that future, I recall all my past efforts. Recently, a major project at work that I had meticulously planned was a success, and my promotion was confirmed. My salary, already decent, increased significantly. Mason, though not promoted, also received a significant raise due to his tenure. With both of our incomes rising, it felt like the perfect time to turn our long-held dream of owning a home into reality. So I approached Mason to discuss our next steps. I think it might be time for us to start thinking about getting our place. What do you think, Mason? His response was instantly enthusiastic. Is it time already? I could hear the excitement in his voice. He continued, I've been thinking about it too, but since I haven't been promoted yet, I was a bit hesitant to bring it up. Don't worry about that, I reassured him. It's not like only one of us needs to be earning. I was thinking we could even put the house in my name since I'm earning more now. Really? Well, if you're okay with it, then yes, let's do it in your name. Mason agreed with a smile. All right, let's proceed with that. Let's go check out some model homes on our next day off. Sounds great. Let's not miss this chance, I replied, feeling a deep sense of gratitude for having Mason by my side. We share the same values, and at moments like these, I know I made the right choice. The following week, we made an appointment to view model homes as planned. We explored various designs, expanding our vision for what our own home could be, Over the weekends, we started sketching out simple floor plans together and doing online research. During a recent visit to a construction company, they suggested that instead of leaving everything to them, it would be better if we developed our ideas to ensure our home truly reflected our personalities. Mason and I loved the idea, though we admitted to each other that our knowledge of architecture and design was quite limited. Still, we were eager to learn and started to shape our vision. Even with the research, applying what we learned took time. We balanced this new project with our work, taking breaks when needed. Then, unexpectedly, the doorbell rang. Thinking it was just a delivery, I opened the door only to find my mother-in-law standing there. "Huh. Mother, what brings you here so suddenly?" I asked, surprised by her unannounced visit. Without a word, she removed her shoes and made herself at home. Mason, hearing her, came out surprised. "Mom, what's up? Didn't Nancy tell you?" "I spoke to her about it a little while ago over the phone," his mother replied, looking a bit puzzled. Mason turned to me. "Maybe Nancy forgot to mention it." "That's not true, Mom," I interjected quickly. "It's not forgetfulness. I've just been incredibly busy with work. Nancy handles both her job and our household responsibilities, keeping her mind constantly buzzing with tasks." "You're such a thoughtful person, Mason. Your late father would have been proud of how you support her," my mother-in-law remarked with genuine admiration. Then she asked Mason, "Why did you come over today?" With a content smile, she pulled a travel brochure from her bag, spread it on the table, and pointed to a page marked with a Post-it note. "Listen, Mason, I've always dreamed of seeing Niagara Falls. Would you take me there, please?" she asked excitedly, taking us both by surprise. Mason and I were speechless, mouths hanging open as she continued to push. "Come on, Mason, think of it as an act of filial piety," she urged, seeing Mason's flustered expression. "Wait a minute, Mom. It's a bit sudden to spring a trip on us," Mason managed to say. "You could come too, Nancy. I was thinking of asking Anna, but if Mason's coming, we could make it a family trip," she added casually. "Hannah is Mason's sister." "What are you talking about?" Mason responded, slightly confused. "Nancy is here, and I can't just take time off from work. Plus, it feels odd for me to finance a trip for you and my sister." "Not odd at all," his mother countered swiftly. "Spending money on family is a wonderful thing, don't you think?" she said, turning to me for support. Though taken aback, I stood my ground. Using one's own money for the family isn't bad, but imposing it on others is different, I replied. "What do you mean by that? Are you suggesting I'm trying to extort travel expenses from Mason?" she asked, her tone shifting. I tried to clarify without sounding harsh. "I didn't mean it like that, but it did sound like you were expecting us to cover the trip," I explained. "That's terrible, Nancy. I had no such intention," she exclaimed, clearly upset. "You're making me out to be the villain in front of Mason." "I didn't mean to call you a villain," I quickly assured her, trying to diffuse the tension. I responded truthfully to the question posed. "Okay, there's no need for excuses, Nancy. Why are you so heartless? You must not like me, do you?" my mother-in-law accused, her eyes icy as she glared at me. This kind of situation is not new. Whenever she visits, she often finds a reason to ask for money, which she then tends to squander with Anna, Mason's sister. While the idea of supporting family sounds noble, what happens here feels more like extortion. This dynamic shifts when Mason gives them money out of kindness. Still, I've never been fond of his mother's or sister's demanding ways. Mason once told me that after his father passed away, his mother and sister's behavior became quite selfish. His father, who died when Mason was in high school, used to manage the finances carefully. With his absence, there was no one left to oversee their spending, which included freely using the life insurance money. Anna works part-time and earns a modest salary, which makes their financial situation precarious. This is often her excuse for showing up at our door, claiming life is tough, or she needs a break and wants to travel, subtly hinting at needing money from Mason. Before I married Mason, it seemed he was constantly at the mercy of his mother's demands. There was a dependency there, a reliance on the care she provided after his father's death. But since marrying me, Mason has begun to see their true colors. Even though they frequently ask for money, Mason has been making a concerted effort to refuse. Recently, he started to assert himself more with his mother in response to her spiteful comments like, "You don't like me, do you?" Or, "Why should I be nice to such an uncharming daughter-in-law?" Mason stood his ground. "Just because you're my mother doesn't mean you can speak badly of Nancy. Didn't she just answer your question honestly?" "You're taking Nancy's side," his mother exclaimed, shocked. "What are you talking about?" "I think you're in the wrong here, Mom." "That's so unfair," she retorted, her voice full of indignation. "Surely Nancy must have poisoned your mind against me. Poor thing, you were such a kind child before we got married." "I'm telling you, that's not the reason." "I'm saying this because I truly believe it," Mason responded firmly, taking his mother by surprise. She wasn't used to being contradicted like this. With a frustrated expression and biting her lower lip, she finally said, "Fine," and left abruptly. "Nancy, I'm sorry I always make you feel uncomfortable." Mason apologized once his mother had departed. "No, it's okay. Hey, you stood up for us this time." I reassured him, "Once we build our own home, we'll be further away. Maybe then we can minimize our interactions with your mom and sister." "Yeah, that would be a relief," Mason agreed, sounding genuinely grateful. The location we were considering for our new home was quite far from our current apartment, which would also be more convenient for our commutes. Currently, our apartment is about 4 train stations away from Mason's parents' house, but the new house would be 3 times farther and require several transfers. The route from the station was also complicated, so unless we gave them the address, they likely wouldn't be able to find it. This move seemed like a perfect opportunity to distance ourselves from the frequent and often uncomfortable family interactions. Later, we submitted our floor plan ideas to the construction company, and 3 months later, construction began. About 8 months after that, our $800,000 dream home was completed. We managed to carve out some time from our busy schedules to pack. A few days before the move, I received a call from my mother-in-law. I was in the middle of packing, so I put her on speakerphone. "Hello," I greeted. "Nancy, when are you moving?" "You bought a house, right?" "I want to live with you," she blurted out, her voice unusually high-pitched, catching me off guard. In the background, I could hear Anna, my sister-in-law, chuckling. "That's great. We can make Nancy work for us every day." "Mom, you came up with a good idea," she snickered. Did they think I couldn't hear them? It was clear they were planning to freeload off our move, imagining an easy life at our expense. Honestly, I had no intention of living with them, and I believe Mason felt the same way. However, discussing our new house with them might have led them to assume we would be living together. The idea that my dear Mason could be colluding with them worries me, but I am determined not to let them dictate our lives. It seems like they're trying to manipulate the situation to their advantage. If that's their plan, I'll have to be one step ahead. I informed them of our moving date, and immediately my mother-in-law and Anna responded with their plans. "We'll come to your apartment in the afternoon on that day. Take us with you in the car and arrange the movers for us too," they demanded, then hung up. Of course, I had no intention of fulfilling their demands. Before I could discuss this with Mason, I turned around to find him already standing there. "Mason, were you listening? I was about to take a break and talk to you about this." "Was that Mom on the phone just now?" he asked. "Yes, I was going to talk to you about that as well. Why did you tell your mother about our new home?" I questioned, a bit surprised. "It's not quite like that," Mason explained. "Last time Mom visited, she saw the floor plan of our new house lying around. She's been pestering me about it every day since, so I eventually gave in." Mason confessed, clearly regretful. "Nancy, I'm sorry. You don't think I intend to live with them, do you?" he quickly added. "Of course not, Mason," I reassured him. "After hearing that phone call, I think it might be better if we cut ties with them." Mason's expression darkened, more furious than I'd ever seen him. It was clear he was on my side, which relieved me immensely. He explained further that his mother had taken a keen interest in the layout of our new home, pretending to inquire casually while bombarding him with questions about the number of rooms and other details. This conversation only solidified our resolve. We agreed it was time to set boundaries and protect our new life together from unwanted intrusions. This resolved me even more to stand up against my mother-in-law's overbearing behavior. I had reached my limit with her dictating terms and causing chaos in our lives, but now it was time to turn the page. I was ready to firmly settle this issue once and for all. So the day of the move came. Mason and I got the movers to transport our belongings in the morning, and we drove to our new home. By the time we finished unloading and arranging everything, it was already past 2:00 p.m. While taking a break, we checked our phones and found dozens of missed calls from my mother-in-law. "She called me too," Mason said, his voice tinged with exhaustion. Then, as if on cue, she called again. I answered, leaving the speakerphone on. "Hello, Nancy. Where are you?" "I told you I'd be at the apartment this afternoon, didn't I?" "Yes, you did say that," I replied calmly. "So what can I do for you?" "What do you mean? You didn't arrange for the movers. I've been waiting at home, and not a single truck has shown up. I had to go to your apartment myself." "Is that so? Well, that's too bad. You know I didn't arrange for any movers," I said, keeping my tone even. "What? That's not the agreement. Where is your new house?" she demanded, clearly flustered. "Do you think I'd tell you?" I responded firmly. There was a stunned silence from her end. She probably thought that as long as Mason was involved, she could manipulate the situation to her favor. But Mason had changed. He was now my staunch ally, committed to severing the unhealthy ties with his family. With all my pent-up frustration ready to be let go, I continued, "Just to let you know, neither Mason nor I have any intention of living with the two of you. From now on, please keep out of our lives." "What are you saying? Your opinion doesn't matter. It's up to Mason to decide. At least tell me where the new house is right now. How are you going to get here without even knowing the address?" "This house is in my name. I have the right to decide who lives here. If you two just barge in, it's trespassing." My mother-in-law was taken aback by my assertiveness, and the silence that followed spoke volumes. It was clear that the dynamics had shifted, and Mason and I were finally taking control of our lives. "And I'll sue you if you trespass," I declared with finality. Her response was incredulous. "Trespassing? How rude to say that about your husband's family." At that point, Mason intervened with a steely tone that I had rarely heard from him before. "Family? The family member I respected, my father, is gone. What remains now doesn't resemble the family I once knew." "What are you saying, Mason?" My mother-in-law faltered, her voice tinged with disbelief. "After that last phone call, I've had enough. Just sharing blood with you is embarrassing. From now on, my family is Dave and Nancy. I no longer consider you two parts of my family, Mason declared firmly. Wait, Mason, don't say such things, she pleaded, her voice cracking. Don't bother us again, got it? With that, Mason ended the call and didn't wait for her response. He quickly adjusted his phone settings to block her calls. Hey, Mason, are you really okay with this? I asked him, concerned yet supportive. Yeah, I finally realized that Mom was just using me. I feel completely relieved now, Mason said, a genuine sense of freedom washing over his face. He looked truly relieved, finally free from the manipulative ties that had bound him. That was the turning point for us as a couple, successfully severing the unhealthy connections with my mother-in-law and her daughter. Following this, they were forced to adapt drastically. Mason ceased all support, cutting off their fallback option. Without Mason's assistance, they struggled financially. My sister-in-law's part-time income wasn't sufficient, and my mother-in-law, long a housewife, was compelled to find part-time work. Unaccustomed to the working world, she found it challenging and often faced disapproval at her new job. Meanwhile, Mason and I enjoyed a peaceful life in our new home. There were no more unexpected visits from my mother-in-law, and our lives were truly stress-free. I am endlessly grateful to Mason for believing in me and for his courage in cutting ties with his toxic relatives. Whatever challenges may come our way in the future, I trust that Mason and I will support each other and navigate through life together as a united team.